She thought he was just another quiet guest in the snowy mountains, barely spoke, always scribbling in that old notebook. But when he vanished without a word and left behind pages filled with her life, her voice, her smile, she realized he had been watching her in a way no one ever had. And just when she let go of ever seeing him again, the sky opened up with a sound she would never forget. If you're new to the channel, make sure to hit subscribe, like this video, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to know. Now let's jump into the story. The train pulled into the station with a long sigh, as if even the engine was tired of carrying people running from things. Mira stepped off onto the snowy platform, her worn boots crunching on the gravel. She clutched her backpack tighter, its faded straps digging into her shoulder. The wind was cold and sharp, but it didn't bother her. Not today. 3 days ago, she had called off her wedding. 3 days since she told her parents she wasn't ready to live a life that looked perfect on paper but felt completely wrong inside. Her voice had cracked during that call, but she hadn't turned back. Now she stood in a small Austrian mountain town, where the air was cleaner than she'd ever breathed, and the sky looked like it had been painted fresh each morning. There was no plan, only her, a backpack, and a guest house she found online last minute. It was called Haus Blumenfeld, tucked between snow-dusted pine trees and steep hills that looked like they belonged in a postcard. She walked the short path to the guest house, its wooden beams and green shutters welcoming in a quiet way. Inside, it was warm. Travelers sat on couches, boots by the fireplace, laughing over mismatched mugs of hot cocoa. It was cozy, loud, alive. But Mira didn't feel any of that yet. Not really. She checked in with a tired smile and headed to the small room she'd been assigned. She unpacked only what she needed, changed into a wool sweater, and wandered into the shared kitchen for some tea. That's when she saw him. He was sitting alone at the back table near the frosted window, a dark knit hat pulled low over curls that escaped in lazy waves. His sleeves were rolled to his elbows despite the cold, and in front of him lay a battered notebook. He wasn't eating, just writing. Every now and then he'd stop and stare out at the snowfall like it was telling him a secret. He didn't look up when she entered, and yet, somehow, Mira couldn't stop glancing his way. In the days that followed, she noticed him again and again. He didn't join in on the group dinners or laugh loudly like the others. He never sat near the fire. But he was always there, refilling the kettle when it ran low, returning someone's forgotten gloves, tucking chairs back in after others left. He didn't speak much, but everything he did spoke gently. His name, she would learn later, was Tobin. For now he was just the quiet man with the notebook. Mira wasn't sure why she noticed him so much. Maybe it was because he seemed like the only other person not trying to impress anyone. Or maybe it was the way he sat, steady, still, like he belonged to the silence. One evening, Mira stepped out into the guest house garden. The snow had started, again, soft and slow. The sky was pale, like winter had spilled milk across the stars. She sat on the low stone bench, pulling her coat tighter. Then she saw him. Tobin stood a few feet away, his face tilted toward the sky, snow catching in his eyelashes. He didn't move. He just breathed, like the night itself was enough, like the cold air didn't freeze him but made him feel more alive. She didn't say anything, didn't want to, but he must have felt her watching because he turned. Their eyes met across the snowy garden. He didn't smile, didn't speak, just gave a slow, respectful nod, and something inside Mira, something unsure, something still bruised, nodded back. She didn't know it yet, but that small moment would be the beginning of everything. The next morning, she found a napkin on the kitchen table where he usually sat. Folded once, no name on it, just a short, handwritten line. Sometimes the softest things hold the heaviest stories. She read it twice. Her tea cooled beside her. Her fingers tightened around the napkin. She didn't know if it was meant for her, but her heart did. The days passed slowly at Haus Blumenfeld, like snow drifting down from the mountains, quiet, unhurried, and beautiful in its stillness. Mira found herself settling into a rhythm. Mornings began with the smell of fresh bread and the soft creak of old floors. Travelers came and went, some noisy, some shy. But one thing stayed the same. Tobin. He was always there. Not in the middle of things, but just nearby. Writing in that same worn notebook, wearing the same soft hat, eyes thoughtful, hands calm. Mira tried not to be too curious, but she noticed the details, like how Tobin always helped clean the kitchen, even if he hadn't eaten, or how he left little notes behind, folded, napkins with kind words, tiny quotes, or doodles of pine trees and coffee mugs. No signature. But somehow she always knew they were his. He never seemed to expect thanks. Never asked for anything in return. One afternoon, Mira tried skiing for the first time. A group from the guest house had planned a trip, and though she wasn't sure she wanted to go, she said yes. Maybe she just wanted to feel something again. The beginning was fun, wind in her face, laughter echoing through the trees. But on her second run, she hit a patch of ice, lost balance, and fell hard. The cold rushed into her coat and a sharp pain shot through her ankle. She limped back to the guest house, cheeks red from embarrassment and cold. Her pride hurt more than her leg. That evening she lay on her bed, holding a cold pack to her ankle, and wondering if this whole escape had been a mistake. Then came a knock. Just one. No voice. When she opened the door, there was no one there. Only a small metal thermos placed gently on the floor. Steam rose from the spout. A sticky note was pressed to the side, written in the same neat handwriting she'd seen before. Add honey if you want, or drink it stubborn. No name, no signature, just warmth. Mira's heart fluttered, not in a romantic way, at least not yet, but in a way that made her feel seen, like someone, somewhere, had noticed her pain and wanted her to feel a little less alone. The next evening, she went into the kitchen after dinner. Tobin was already there, sleeves rolled, quietly cleaning the counter. She picked up a towel and began drying dishes beside him. They didn't speak at first, just moved in rhythm, like they had done this 100 times. Then, without looking up, Tobin said softly, "Do you like Käsespätzle?" Mira blinked. "I don't know. I've never had it." "I'll show you," he replied. He gathered ingredients, cheese, flour, onions. Mira watched his hands move with care, like cooking was something sacred. He grated cheese, chopped herbs, and showed her how to press the dough into boiling water without getting burned. He didn't touch her hand. Didn't flirt, just showed her. Slowly, gently. She asked him where he learned to cook. He just said, "Someone I used to know." And for once, that was enough. They shared the meal in the quiet corner by the window. The snow fell outside in thick flakes dancing in the golden glow of the porch lights. Mira laughed when she put too much salt in her dish. Tobin smiled, just slightly, but it was the kind of smile that made her feel like she'd won something small and precious. That night, she stayed behind to help put the kitchen back in order. As she wiped down the table, she spotted a folded paper tucked between two mugs. She picked it up and opened it. Inside was a short line. "You teach like someone once taught you. Kind without trying." Her breath caught in her throat. She had taught English back home, before everything fell apart. She hadn't told anyone here, not even once. How did he know? The next morning, she taught a few local kids who wandered into the guesthouse cafe with their parents. She showed them animal words using drawings and made silly faces to make them laugh. One boy clapped wildly when he finally said butterfly all by himself. When she looked up, Tobin was watching from the other side of the glass. He didn't wave, didn't move, but he smiled, and for Mira, that smile meant more than 100 words ever could. Later that night, she found a plate on the long wooden table, a slice of apple cake. Next to it, another note. This one read, "When you speak, you remind me the world can still be gentle." Mira didn't know what this quiet man had gone through. She didn't know what he had lost or why he stayed away from people. But she knew how he made her feel. Safe. Not because he saved her, but because he saw her. In the stillness of winter, without saying much at all, Tobin had begun to speak to her in ways that mattered more than anything else. And in her heart, something tired and quiet began to whisper back. The next morning, the guest house felt different. The usual sounds were there. Clinking cups, soft music, quiet conversations. But something was missing. Something small, but important. Mira noticed it the moment she stepped into the kitchen. Tobin's chair by the window was empty. His notebook wasn't on the table. His mug, the one with the little mountain sketch on it, wasn't sitting beside the kettle like it usually was. She waited for him to appear, to walk in silently like always and take his place near the window, but he never came. She asked the woman at the front desk, "Have you seen Tobin?" The woman shook her head. "No, not since last night." There were no bags in the hallway, no jacket on the hook where he usually left it. It was like he had disappeared. Back in the kitchen, Mira sat in his chair. She let her hands rest on the wooden table, hoping somehow she'd feel his presence. The air was colder now, emptier, and then she saw it. Under a folded tea towel near the corner of the table was a notebook. His notebook. The one he never let out of his hands. The one he was always writing in. She froze. Her fingers hovered over the cover. It felt wrong to touch it, like opening someone's diary. But then again, he'd left it where she'd find it. Maybe he wanted her to. Her hand shook a little as she picked it up. The leather was soft and worn at the edges. The pages were thick and yellowed like it had lived a life of its own. She opened it slowly. The first few pages were blank. Then on the fourth page, she saw it. Her. Not her name, but it was her. She entered the kitchen like the wind had carried her there, quiet but full of something unspoken. I knew she wasn't just passing through. Some people arrive with heavy feet. She arrived like a question waiting for an answer. Mira's breath caught. She turned the page. She hums when she makes tea, not loudly, just a tune she doesn't realize she's singing. It stays in the room after she leaves. More pages, more words, all about her. She speaks gently to children, not like they're small, but like they matter. That's rare. I remember being a child who didn't matter. Maybe that's why I notice. Mira blinked away tears. Her hands trembled. This man who hardly spoke a full sentence to her had been seeing her, truly seeing her, all along. Every page felt like a mirror she didn't know she needed. He noticed how she wrapped her hands around mugs to feel the warmth, how she smiled politely even when she was clearly tired, how she listened more than she talked. And then, near the back, something changed. The handwriting became shakier, slower. I thought love was something I buried, something I lost forever. But then she smiled at the snow, not at me, just at the world. And somehow, it made me want to hope again. Mira closed the notebook and held it to her chest. The kitchen, filled with voices and clinking dishes just moments before, now felt quiet around her, like the whole room had paused. She sat there for a long time. When the afternoon sun started to slip behind the hills, Mira got up and went to her room. She placed the notebook gently on the bed and opened her laptop. She didn't know what she was looking for, but something inside her whispered, "Find him." She typed his name, Tobin. She didn't have a last name, but she remembered a clue. That hospital number. She flipped to the very back of the notebook and saw it again. A phone number with a date scribbled next to it. She searched the area code. It was in Berlin. Heart pounding, she called the number. "Hello, this is Feldbrook Medical," said a voice on the other end. "I'm sorry," Mira said quickly. I'm trying to find someone. I think he called from your number. What's the name? Tobin, she said. He was staying in Interlaken. He may have called about someone, or something, a few days ago. There was a pause. Yes, the voice said. He made a call here. Left no contact information, just a note. Would you like to know what it said? Mira nodded, even though the person on the other end couldn't see her. The nurse continued. Please tell them, if anyone asks, that I didn't leave because I wanted to disappear. I left because I didn't want her to feel responsible for fixing me. She gave me back something I thought was gone. Hope. That's enough. Mira sat back in her chair, the notebook still resting in her lap. Tobin wasn't just a quiet man with a habit of writing. He was someone who had been carrying something heavy. Someone who had stepped out of the shadows just long enough to leave behind a story only she could finish. And now it was her turn. The sky was pale and quiet over the village that morning, the kind of soft gray that made the mountains look even taller. Mira stood on the same hill behind the guest house where she'd last seen Tobin standing in the snow, his eyes to the sky. She held his notebook in her hands like it was something living. She hadn't planned to stay this long, but each day felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for something. The kitchen still smelled like cinnamon in the mornings. The napkins were still folded, but the chair by the window remained empty. Mira had followed the number in the back of the notebook. She made the call. She heard his message. It broke her heart, but not in a way that left her hopeless. It broke her open. For days, she wrote in her own small notebook. Nothing fancy, just pieces of thought. Questions she had never asked out loud. Why did he leave without saying goodbye? Why had he written about her when he could barely speak to her? Why did it feel like he had taken something she didn't know she needed until it was gone? And why, after everything, did she still believe he would come back? She didn't know the answers. But she wrote anyway. Now, standing on that hill, notebook open on her lap, Mira watched the snow begin to fall again, soft, slow, like before. She had no expectations, no plans, just silence and sky. Then her phone buzzed. She blinked. One new message, no name, look up. Her heart leapt. Mira stood, eyes lifting to the sky. At first, nothing, just snowflakes and quiet wind. But then, faint at first, she heard it. A low hum, growing stronger, a helicopter. She squinted into the sky as it emerged, cutting through the gray like a bird with purpose. It moved slowly, gently, until it began to descend toward the open field at the bottom of the hill. The wind whipped her hair across her face as she stepped closer, heart pounding, breath stuck somewhere between hope and disbelief. The helicopter touched down. Its door opened, and there he was. Tobin. He stepped out carefully, his dark coat dusted with snow, curls wind-blown but familiar. He wasn't holding a backpack. No notebook in sight. Just a small velvet box in one hand. Mira didn't move. He walked toward her, not rushed, not unsure. Each step seemed steady, like he'd practiced this in his mind 100 times. When he reached her, he stopped. I didn't know how to come back, he said, his voice quiet but sure. I thought disappearing would protect you, she said, nothing, her eyes filling with tears. Tobin looked down for a moment, then opened the box. Inside was a simple silver ring, no diamond. Just a smooth band etched with a single word from one of his old notebook entries. Real. He met her gaze again. I've spent years hiding in silence. After I lost someone, I didn't think I'd ever find the courage to love again. But then, there you were. Quiet, kind, full of life I didn't think I'd ever feel again. And suddenly, I wasn't afraid anymore. The wind stilled. The snow fell slower, as if the world itself was listening. I'm not here with a perfect plan, Tobin continued. I'm not asking for forever right now, I'm just asking, can we write the next part together, one page at a time? Mira stared at him, not the man who had left, but the one who had returned. Not because he had to, But because he chose to, she didn't look at the ring, she looked at him and then she smiled. I wasn't waiting for the ring, she whispered. I was waiting for you. Tobin smiled too, really smiled. And for the first time, the weight behind his eyes seemed to lift. They stood together as the snow danced around them. The sky, once gray, now stretched open above like it had been, holding this moment in reserve. Later that week, they didn't move into a house with matching dishes or shelves full of picture frames. Instead, they bought 2 train tickets to nowhere in particular, packed their bags, and took the long road together. They visited small towns, taught English to children, volunteered at libraries, and collected stories like souvenirs. Mira wrote. Tobin sketched. And together, they filled new pages. Their blog, Quiet Skies, became a home for lost thoughts and love stories whispered across the world. People found comfort in it, not because it was flashy, but because it was honest. And one day, back at house, Blumenfeld, a young traveler, sat crying softly at the kitchen table. Mira noticed her from across the room, just as she had once been noticed. She brewed a cup of tea and walked over. Here, she said gently, placing the mug down. Sometimes the people we're meant to meet find us when we stop looking. The girl blinked, surprised. Mira smiled. In the background, Tobin hung a small frame on the guest house wall. Inside was his first notebook, the one he had left behind. Below it, a small brass plate read, "Some stories begin in silence, but they are never quiet for long."